and we will go ahead and get started. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our new virtual series of Charger Chats. I'm Michelle Farmer. I'm the Assistant Director in the Alumni Office, and we're so glad you joined us during your lunchtime today. Our first chat is going to be with UAH alumna, Ms. Kimberly Harper. Kimberly received both her bachelor's and master's degrees from UAH. Her bachelor's degree is in elementary education with a focus in language and culture, and her master's degree is in differentiated instruction. She currently teaches second grade in Madison City schools, and she's going to be sharing some tips and tricks for successful outcomes while teaching your young children at home right now. I know distance learning or e-learning is new territory for many of you, so Kimberly is here to help. Just to let you know, we'll let Kimberly go ahead and share first her expertise, and then we'll allow time at the end for Q&A. And how we'll do the Q&A part is you'll just drop your question in the chat function of Zoom, and I'll be able to see those, and we'll go through those at the end. All right?
Yay! All right. Well, hi, thanks, Michelle. First of all, I just want to say hello. I guess it's not, I was going to say good morning, but it's not really morning. The days just kind of zoom by really quickly these days, but it's so good to be here with you guys. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys because I just have a little presentation to, honestly, to keep me on track, because I, as a teacher, am used to having a captive audience. So I am used to just talking and talking and talking. But hello, like Michelle said, my name is Kimberly. I went to UAH for both undergrad and graduate, so I'm very familiar, love UAH, and I teach second grade in Madison. This is my 5th year teaching, and I absolutely love it. However, this year has really caused some new challenges. I don't think any of us were really expecting a pandemic to happen. So it's been a learning experience for us all. And so I'm hopefully just gonna share some really simple tips and tricks that could work for any age child. And the first thing I wanna note is just, and hopefully this is something you've already gotten into a rhythm with your students and your child, is finding a schedule that works for you. I provided my families with a sample schedule, and I probably sounded like a broken record repeating myself a million times, like, do what works for your family. I think a schedule is really important though, just because when we're working with young kids, providing consistency during a time, kids always can use routine and consistency, but during something like this, where everything is so uncertain and their world is already being so disruptive, being able to find something they can find stability in, where they know this is going to be our routine, is something they can really find comfort in. But however, your schedule doesn't have to be pretty and color coded like my schedule. It can be whatever works best for you and your family. I know that this is a way that I thought if I was running the show, this is how I would do it. But then I've heard from my families, and they've said, listen, like, we wanted so badly for that to work for us, but it's not working, and that's okay. And I think that was something that was really hard for them to get over, to like more and like, okay, this isn't going to work for us. We need to adjust. So of course, adjust accordingly. Some of my families have reported that it works best for them when they just get up and get it done. Whereas other families have said, it actually works best if we just have our mornings, a slow start, we have lunch, we could play, and then in the afternoons we sit down and do the work together. And so there's no right or wrong. It's every family is different, so whatever works best for you. And I think Michelle is going to find a way for us to share this, but if you want to jot down this link down here, if you're interested in this template where you could edit your own schedule, you can go to that link. It's just a bit.ly link, and I have that free for you to download so that you could adjust it according to your own needs. And that's something that you could print and say, listen, we're sticking to this schedule. All right, the next thing I wanted to note is something that was new to me as a need. It didn't necessarily occur to me until we've been in this that it was a need, and that's just a focus on social and emotional learning. I think we can all agree that even as adults, we are all this situation has brought a lot of fear and anxiety just because we don't know the outcome of what's going to happen. And each day just seems like it's bringing new information. And so kids are not immune from those feelings. They go through anxious feelings just like the rest of us. They also are dealing with the fear and just the uncertainty of it all. And they're missing their friends or missing their routines. And so, kids, they don't know how to necessarily cope with their feelings always. And so one thing that I've had a lot of parents report to me is that they have just had a really hard time motivating their child to get going. A lot of whining and complaining and, this isn't how Miss Harper does it, or this isn't normal. And those are all normal feelings for them to feel. And sometimes they don't know how to express how they're feeling to you. It just comes out as whining. And so it's really an adjustment to move our mindset. When you think about it, our brains are wired to think that this is my home, this is my safe place, this is a haven for me, this is where I rest, it's where I play, it's where I relax. And we're having to all rewire, us adults included, that now this is not only my place of rest, but it's also my place of work. And so that can be a confusing transition. And so one thing that I've been doing with my families is just encouraging them, hey, let's have some candid conversations. But if you are not really sure where to start, I think that picture books are a great place to start. It's amazing that when your child can relate to the character struggle, to how that can start opening up some conversations. And I linked here, and I can get this link to you, just some picture books that are great for teaching some of those social emotional skills, some things like empathy and coping with your feelings, and how to deal with frustrations, because I've heard from a lot of families that it's just been a hard transition. And I think that's totally natural. It's not something to feel alone in. You're not alone if your child is struggling to be motivated to do their work. It's totally normal. And so I think just having some of those conversations of, hey, like, this is what we have to do right now. We're all feeling this way, can really help. And so I would really recommend, and I know that we all don't have a humongous library of picture books at home, but what we do have is the access to the internet, which thank God for the internet, right? And so I know that there are lots of books on YouTube, and there's so many different online platforms that provide books for students. And so I'm actually going to share about that next. Well, I have that later on. Okay, so this is something that I really want to emphasize, that this is new for all of us, okay? We're all learning together, and I obviously speak for the teacher side of things when I say your teacher, every teacher I know personally is doing the best that they can, and they will be the first to admit that they don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out, and there are days where I feel like, hey, I've got this, and then the next day I'm like, what is happening? And so I think we can all agree everyone is just doing their best. They're trying. And so grace upon grace in this season is so important. And I know that your teacher will be gracious with you as you are gracious with them, because I know you're trying your best. I can't imagine having a family, having multiple kids, possibly working from home, all while trying to juggle distance learning. And your child needs grace too, because this is hard. None of us were prepared for this. And it's just been amazing to me how we all just were thrown into the situation with no warning, minimal resources, and just as a community, teachers, parents, stakeholders, we have all just come together and rallied to do what we can and do what's best for kids. So that's what's been really encouraging to me in this whole thing. But I just want to encourage you. Sometimes it seems like such a simple solution, but we forget to keep open lines of communication with your teacher. Let them know what's working. Let them know what isn't, of course, in a gracious way, and just what you need support in, because they want to help you. And for me, I did not even know that it was a need I didn't know my kids were having all these meltdowns and struggles at home, because that just wasn't something that they were sharing with me until one parent opened up in a public, we have a public group of just my parents on Facebook, and one parent commented like, hey, I'm just really struggling to motivate my child. And it just opened up this floodgate of comments of, hey, us too, you're not alone. Oh, this is what's been working for my child. We really had a power struggle here at home. And so that was really eye-opening for me. And so it wasn't until they shared that with me that I was able to put things in place to help them. So now I've been able to start, one-on-one check-ins, and I'm having a parent Zoom call where I can talk with them. And so until your teacher knows that that's even a need, they can't help. So I definitely want to encourage you, reach out if you need it. I know all teachers went in to education, not for the fame and the money, but because they want to help, and they want to help kids. And, that's why we're here. So the last thing I just wanted to talk about were just online resources. And I know that this can kind of be like very overwhelming, because it seems like there are endless resources. And like I said earlier, it's been so encouraging to me to see how everyone has just come together. So many people have come and said, hey, we're offering this for free. We're offering this for free. There's this resource. There's this resource. There's so much out there. And so I want to go ahead and give you permission. You don't have to use everything. Like, even if your teacher sends it out, you don't have to use everything, because you just can't. You'd be on the computer all day. And I know we're all kind of concerned, like, whoa, this is a lot of screen time. So I think you just have to find what your child loves and enjoys and what's most beneficial for you and utilize those. And your teacher should be able to guide you on what he or she recommends. Obviously, there are so many things, and I have certain things that, I prefer for my second graders to use, maybe because we're familiar with them or whatever. But this is just a list that I've created of some things that I know are free to use and are out there. So feel free to pick and choose what works for you. But like I said, you can't possibly do everything. It's just a matter of figuring out what works for you. But I know that I've heard from parents like, it's just also overwhelming. There's so many options. So I've tried to provide some guidance of starring certain things like, hey, this is a really great resource that your child already knows how to use. And so sometimes that can provide some comfort that it's familiar. And so just in summary, I know that we're all better together. We're all in this together, and, don't feel alone. We are all just figuring this wild, unexpected journey together, and I would love to connect with you if you have any questions. That is my Instagram handle. I love to connect with people, and so if you have any questions, I know Michelle's going to open up the chat, so feel free to ask anything, and I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you guys again.
Well, thank you, Kimberly, for sharing that. I really appreciate you putting that together for us today. I know that we saw a few different links, so and Kay asked about making that available. So we'll make sure that we can get all those resources to you, those links for you. We'll figure out a way to get that to you so you can access it at home and take advantage of it. So does anybody have any questions for Kimberly? If you want to, just use the chat function and we'll go through that. And I know for sure, I did want to ask one question at Kimberly, if there was one area that parents, caretakers could focus on during this time, what would that one area be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always laugh because even when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, parents ask me that, especially during parent-teacher conferences. And regardless of your child's age, I would say I think everyone underestimates the power of just reading. You always hear like, read 20 minutes a day, read 20 minutes a day. And it just kind of seems like something that we tack on as like, oh yeah, do that too. But if I could X out everything, I would make that my number one priority, because I think, people always want to say, how can I help my child become a better reader? I really wish there was a magic answer, but the answer is to read, whatever that looks like, whether that's them reading books you have at home, whether that's you reading to them. Maybe you want to start a chapter book together where you're reading that to them, or them reading to you, or you reading to them, or listening to an audiobook or watching a book on YouTube. There are tons of YouTube channels that have picture books on there where there's a storyteller. I know it's not ideal always to be on a screen, but what is neat about that is that it opens up so many more books that you might not have at home. And so I would say, no matter your child's age, if you can foster a true love of reading, that will stick with them for the rest of their life and benefit for them for the rest of their life.
I think that's very well said. All right, here's another question. So you had that list of resources at the end. Were there any resources that you'd recommend that they had to do with activities that don't require a screen?
Yes. So of course, it's so easy for us to be able to get online and do things. But however, a lot of times it can start with you go to the online resource and then they have things that are printable for you. I know not everyone has access to a printer, but some things that I've been providing for my parents, because I'm with you. I don't want kids on screens for hours upon hours a day, because we know the outcome of that. It's not good for us. And so I would encourage you to take things that and it all depends on your child's how old they are. But for my kids, they're 7 years old. So I'm encouraging them to do like scavenger hunts around their house. Say we're working on nouns. I might say, hey, go find 10 nouns around your house and write them down. So, they could come back with apple, hairbrush, potato, whatever they might find around, looking around the house. And that can be done with almost anything. You could go on a shape hunt for 2D or 3D shapes. You could go on a compound word hunt. I know one of the skills we work on in second grade is finding compound words, cupcake, cupcake, toothbrush, toothbrush. And so kids love the opportunity to go look around the house and find things. And you could take that even outside in nature. It's always good for us to get outside, get moving, do a walk, things like that. So I encourage things like that. And then even, bringing it back to old school, doing a science experiment. Those are things that kids love and that unfortunately we don't always have the funding and the time in the classroom to do. Like, how many times would your kid beg you to make slime after doing it one time? That is so fun. And there's really a lot of math that goes into it too. I think we underestimate cooking with your child, where they can be measuring and just having conversations with your child as you do normal everyday life skills. We're measuring this out. This is half of a cup, or counting change. Those are all things that are not only educational, but they're wonderful life skills that just fostering those conversations with your child can really help.
Okay. Makes me want to cook more.
Except for the cleanup, right?
Yeah. All right, we do have another question. One of our attendees has a very high energy social 5-year-old, very bright, but gets easily distracted. Do you have any tips for teaching a child with a short attention span?
Yeah, I feel like that's most kids these days, huh? It's hard to hold their attention. And I always say as a teacher, it's sometimes frustrating because I feel like on my best day, I'm never going to be as captivating as like a TV show. And so I have to keep in mind their age, and their attention span is more than likely age appropriate. They say that, if a child is 5 years old, then really their attention span is not going to be much beyond their age, so like 5 to 10 minutes. And so keeping that in mind, chunking tasks I think is really a great tool for helping them be successful. When kids feel like there's a long to-do list and they have so much to do, but they're not actually getting anything done because it just feels so long and defeating, I think it can really help to chunk a task into smaller bites and say, hey, once we finish this small task, we're going to do this. We're going to have a 30-second dance party, or we're going to watch this book on YouTube, or we're going to listen to this song I know you really like. It doesn't have to be a huge long break, but just long enough to give them a release from whatever they felt like the task was, and then to get back onto whatever it was. Okay, we did that. I don't know if you've ever heard of Go Noodle. It's got tons of silly dance videos. Some of them are educational. Some of them are just insane, but kids think are funny. And so even just providing a 1-minute break, or a little dance party, things like that, getting to do something that has nothing to do with the task, I think will really helps. Or providing, I hate to always incentivize work because, sometimes, like for me, reading is the prize. Like, you don't get a treat for reading because the treat is that you got to read. And so, but when something is a little bit more difficult, or you're having a hard time motivating them, sometimes you can say, hey, if we can knock this out, then we're going to get to play with Play-Doh later, or we're going to get to make our own Play-Doh. And I find that kids are really motivated by that. But just also having realistic expectations. No 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, really anybody can sit down straight for an hour, hour and a half and knock out all their tasks. I can't even do that without wanting to check my phone or getting up and stretching. And so I know it sounds simple, but bite-sized chunks really help.
It sounds like just a reward system, if you will, like having a motivator in there too would be helpful. So,
knowing you're going to have time for a release. Like, I'm really unmotivated if I know I have to sit down. Like, I don't want to get started on the task if I know it's going to take a long time. But if I schedule a walk in between, or if I know that at this point in the activity I get to break, it just makes it a little bit less daunting to get started. Like, for example, when I do my report card comments, I have to tell myself, after I break it up into fractions, if you do 1/4 of them, then you can go do this. And then, it makes me more motivated to get back to it.
That's very true. All right. Well, I think we only have one more question. And this last question is, well, how can we better support our teachers and educators during this time?
Awesome. So one of my parents actually asked me that, and I was really touched that she did, because I thought, well, thanks. Like, thank you for asking. That's so nice. And I think that people really underestimate just how much teachers really do miss their kids. We don't see this as a vacation. We're not thrilled to be chilling at home. We would 1,000,000% rather to be at school with your child, doing all the fun things we planned. I shared with Michelle earlier that, you know, the beginning of the year is really hard. You are really investing a lot of time getting to know the kid, getting to know their family, knowing what motivates them and what, makes them tick and how to best work with them. And we kind of always look forward to this time of year, because it's like all that you have been sowing, you're finally reaping the benefits, because you're a family now and you just love each other so much and you really can do so much. And of course, there's all the fun end of the year things like the parties and the field days and the field trips. And so we're all just mourning those things that we didn't get to do, all the fun things we had planned that we never got to. And we genuinely love and miss and care about your child. And so I always am so encouraged when a family takes the time to snap a picture of what they're doing, or just to send me a quick note or picture, showing me what they're up to, especially if it's something that I've encouraged them to do, or, maybe it was an optional activity that I gave them, like to go on a walk or to write a letter to a family member, some of those non-screen time activities. Like, I've been encouraging mine to write a letter to a family member or call someone up on the phone, that a family member you don't talk to often. And so for them to share with me that they're actually doing those things and give me a little window into their world, it just makes me not feel so distant, and just helps with the fact that I just miss them all so much. So that's the one thing that's made me feel really just supported in during this time.
Perfect. I really appreciate your time today, Kimberly, and thank you all so much for joining us for our first Charger Chats. So we really appreciate you guys coming, spending time with us during your lunch break. Like we said earlier, we'll make sure that we send out the recording, and we'll also find a way, I'll get with Kimberly on how to best share the links and resources that she had published in her presentation. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time. Have a good day.